Welcome back to Talking Point. Jazakallah so much for joining us. Joining us now via Zoom is the interim CEO of Eskom, Mr. Calib Cassim. Mr. Cassim, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and Jazakallah so much for joining us.
Alaikum salam for us. Thanks for having me.
No, it's an absolute pleasure to have you. Mr. Cassim, let's talk about the transition from obviously your role as the CFO right now into the executive one at this moment.
So yes, a significant change from just focusing on the finances. I think the big difference between the CFO and the CEO of Eskom, there's obviously a lot of other issues that comes with the CEO hot seat. A lot more staff issues, labor issues, supplier and customer issues, and then also dealing with the number of demands from various government departments. And most importantly, also, you'd appreciate Eskom's always in the news and then dealing with media issues and then attending all the parliamentary committees. So much more wider, quite challenging, a lot of issues. You walk into the office in the morning, you have a diary planned, and then it goes haywire during the course of the day. But I think you just take a deep breath and then focus on the priorities.
Mr. Cassim, the challenges are there for all to see. A few weeks ago, obviously, you had given a press conference talking about the potential of Stage 8. As we speak at this very moment, load shedding seems to be subsided. But the challenges that you face, what we've seen obviously with your predecessors, how are you able to handle it given the electricity crisis within the country?
So I think first and foremost, the main objective is we know that the Eskom staff and the leadership are instrumental to fixing this electricity crisis. Yes, we have the support of government and business, and everyone else in the country wants to assist us. 40,000 people at Eskom have to make this difference and this shift. And for me, it's about motivating all 40,000 together with the leadership that it has to be done. The country is significantly being impacted by the economic negativity of the load shedding. But more importantly, for us, you and your viewers, we all know how difficult it is when the light goes out. I mean, we've been through Ramadan, unlike before, with a city or if they're not having that electricity, is very painful, and to work around that. And this week, by just having lights on in the morning, it's a positive step, and I'm pushing the team to make sure we can try to continue with that.
Mr. Cassim, many people call the CEO position a poison chalice. Is that a myth, or is that a statement that holds true?
I think it's definitely the most difficult CEO post in the country with all the challenges and the spotlight on that office. And more importantly, to get us out of load shedding as quick as possible, doing it within proper governance and the frameworks, despite all the challenges. I think at the end of the day, there has to be, and it's very difficult to say for the country after 15 years of load shedding, still to have patience. But I'm convinced that as we get through the winter, there will be a significant improvement in the supply and the demand of electricity. And with the support of government and the various ministers going into the new year, I think it will definitely reduce. But yes, it is a challenging job. My only advice to the incoming CEO is, I think whatever you read in the press, the challenges are significant, but you need a strong team behind you and stand up for what you believe in.
Mr. Cassim, the best and worst case scenario for the nation as winter enters, I know you mentioned Stage 8. We still haven't reached there, so we can be at least grateful for that. But as we go deeper into winter, give the public an idea of potentially the best and worst case scenario for these cold months.
So I think firstly, let's not underestimate the actual weather conditions, right? So far, generally, I believe we've had a fairly mild winter. If that continues, I think the outlook is much more positive, depending on the severity, and we are going to get the cold spells. How do we deal with that? I think during those cold spells, as a base scenario, we would want to keep it at maximum stage 6. As a worst case scenario, I think potentially stage 8. If you ask me, based on what we're doing so far, I'm looking that during the evening peaks, if we can maintain stage 4 load shedding on the top end, that there is a good result. And during morning peaks for us, maximum stage 2 or no load shedding at all. And then during the day, try to not load shed. I think we get through that. That will be a successful winter for Eskom and the country.
Mr. Cassim, sabotage. I mean, we read everywhere in the media that this is the case that is going on. And it can come from high level executives, it could come from anyone sitting in a political space, it could even come from the worker on the ground. What are some of the plans that Eskom are trying to do to make sure that they mitigate any supposed sabotage from your side and, of course, the rest of management along with the board?
Yeah. So I think firstly from a management side, we have a number of, we've increased our security, we're working with the law enforcement agencies, but I think most importantly, you need everyone at these power stations to feel that they are all pushing in the same direction. And that is, for me, is the big message, that at the end of the day, we want the people on the ground to push back against their fellow colleagues that are involved in any malfeasance. Yes, we need to address that through our whistleblowing mechanisms, and more importantly, reporting it up to management to work with the law enforcement agencies and to deal with it. At the end of the day, you are not only affecting Eskom, its reputation, but costing the country and the civilians of South Africa significant amounts in terms of the GDP, as well as their own well-being. And I think for us, that patriotic nature needs to come through in terms of the culture, in particular at the power stations. What we do find that across the rest of the business, the significance of it is much more reduced in the rest of the business. But again, at the end of the day, we have to work together as all 40,000 pushing in the same direction. So it's really asking, a power station has so many parts. Anyone can put some liquid that doesn't belong in a certain component of a power station, and that would cause it to trip. So there are many areas that people could fiddle with that affects the outcome, and we really need to make sure everyone at the power station, be it the contractors, be it the Eskom staff and security, are all working with the same objective in mind for the country.
After the break, we continue the conversation with Mr. Calib Cassim, and I'll be talking to him with regards to the importance of working with the various portfolios within distributing energy in South Africa. Do stay tuned. Welcome back to Talking Point. I'm in conversation with Mr. Calib Cassim, the interim CEO of Eskom. Mr. Cassim, the work that Eskom has to do with the Minister of Energy and Minister of Energy, Mr. Gwere Mantashe, and of course the Minister of Public Enterprises, Mr. Pravin Gordhan, especially dealing with the energy crisis. I want to talk about the importance of not just only working with them, but making sure that you are moving in the right direction, because that's what the public wants. They want to see those that are in charge with regards to energy distribution working in the same direction.
Yeah, I think one thing we must compliment President, he's called a session. We had a session with business as well as the ministers and government, I recall this week, Tuesday. And more importantly, through the NECOM structures and the NAT joints, uh, the objectives of delivering. And as the president has indicated, number one priority is to stop load shedding as soon as possible. So definitely clear alignment from three ministers, the objective of supporting ESCOM together, and also we need the support from law enforcement as well as the security structures to deal with vandalism, sabotage, etc. Uh, we as ESCOM can do so much as the organization, but we need the support from government as well. I think maybe the other point to highlight is decision making and implementation for us. I think that's going to be key. There are a number of changes that have been made through the procurement processes and even new regulations that have been issued. So now it's for ESCOM and government to implement to relieve this pressure of load shedding as quick as possible. I'm convinced that the structures are in place and we're starting to see the benefits of some of that coming through. We're not out of the woods, as I said. We need to get through winter and then improve on that going through into the future.
Mr. Cassim, the Minister of Electricity, a new portfolio that was established right after the State of the Nation address by President Cyril Ramaphosa earlier this year. The work being done with him, I mean, there's a third portfolio that you have to add to that. So, the work that ESCOM has to do with the Minister of Electricity in order to make sure that consistent energy is there for the entire public.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, the positive is as the ESCOM and the board strategy in how to fix the plant and where we're going forward. It's one plan that we are communicating. So it's consistent across all portfolios, all stakeholders. And then we're using the office and the Minister of Electricity to work with the government colleagues to unlock elements that are taking too long. And it's really about now how do we implement, and if decisions are not being made through the Minister of Electricity, it's in his domain to assist ESCOM in getting one, the megawatts onto the grid, and two, the necessary support wherever it's required for ESCOM to improve its performance.
Mr. Cassim, the challenges with regards to the power stations, Kusile and Medupi being two of them, of course, Koeberg the other, I mean, the three major ones as we speak at the moment. I mean, how important is it that, maintenance of these stations are there? Because we read, obviously, with the ESCOM statements come out, that a lack of maintenance sometimes, will always be, haunting these power stations. So the importance of making sure that these power stations, they're of course the most important three, there are many others, but especially these three over here are made to be maintained on a consistent basis.
Yeah, no, definitely. And as you said, it applies to all. I think positively, if we look at Medupi and fixing the defects, Medupi has been performing tremendously well. I think its energy availability factor is close to 90% and quite reliable. Yes, obviously there is that unit 4 that exploded. We will bring that back next year around August 2024, and that will add over 700 megawatts to the grid. For us, the one element of success that's going to change the dial for ESCOM and South Africa, the three units, because of the duct failure at Kusile, we currently building and constructing those temporary stacks. On the stack 3, I think we're quite far, and the intention is to have those three units up and running starting end of November into December. So by the end of the calendar year, there should be 700 megawatts times three units, just over 2,000 megawatts available to us as a country from a Kusile perspective. And in maintaining that and not repeating the mistakes of the failures in the past is critical. Having the skills to operate the plant using the FGD technology is critical. Last but not least, you mentioned Koeberg. Kuba, once it runs, it's really reliable, over 90%, and it's key to the stability of the grid. We know we're busy with that long outage on Unit 1. That will be followed by Unit 2. And effectively, between now and next year, July, Eskom and the country will only be operating with one unit of Kuba. I think importantly, we're in the process of applying for a life extension for Kuba for 20 years, which is key to supply baseload to the country going forward. Maybe last but not least, with the support of the National Treasury debt relief of 254 billion plus the regulatory tariffs, we're now in a position financially to release the necessary capital expenditure funds, including the maintenance for the next 3 years. We haven't been in this situation for the last 6 years. This is positive, and I'm expecting again no excuses from the power stations that they don't have funds for maintenance. Now it's just about implementing and executing according to design plans.
Mr. Cassim, I know you don't have a glass ball in front of you to predict the future, nor do I. But there's one individual who's confident that load shedding will end by the end of this year. That is ANC Secretary General Mr. Fikile Mbalula. And then the Minister of Electricity, Dr. Hosienso Ramogopa, says he's unsure about it. What is the view of Mr. Cassim with regards to load shedding potentially ending this year, or are we still a far way from that happening?
Yeah, I think, thanks for the difficult question, but I think first and foremost for us, as we said in the media briefing, it's important to protect the grid at all costs. And load shedding as a last resort is implemented from the system operator, who's totally independent of the Eskom board as well, will make that decision to protect the grid from a blackout. So that's first point. Even in our outlook, we do see stages of load shedding that will be required. But so far the progress has been positive. And if we can reduce that as significant, where we just have to deal with the evening peaks going forward, it may not be totally removed by the end of the year. I think going through next year will be much more positive. But I think the reality is a lot of work still needs to be done. There's a big gap of 6,000 megawatts that we need to close between now and December. Kusile's stations coming back will add 2,100. And in terms of our other initiatives, we're looking back to bring about 1,500 megawatts there. So until we get further capacity on the grid through a combination of the initiatives also driven by the Minister of Electricity, there will still remain a slight gap get to the end of the calendar year, but we need to manage it to the best of our abilities. Thanks.
One final question, Mr. Cassim. The transition from fossil fuels to green energy, we see that government obviously wants to push ahead with renewables. I don't know whether you're still going to be in the same position when the green energy or the transition to it does happen, but is there a timeline for renewables to happen, and will that finally bring some sort of consistent energy? I'm not saying that it'll eliminate load shedding, but a sense of consistent energy to the grid.
Yeah, so first and foremost, I mean, through the IPP projects, there's already about 7 gigawatts of renewables on the South African grid. And in terms of the integrated resource plan and the recent bid windows 7 and 8, that's been announced by Minister Mantashe in his budget speech, Eskom fully supports an increase in renewable technologies. One of the challenges, let's admit, as well for us, we need to make sure on the transmission side there's capacity to connect these renewables. We were a constraint in bid window 6, and working with the transmission business and government to make sure that going forward, when the renewables are available, the transmission grid has the capacity to connect them. So agree that more megawatts connected to the grid will contribute to solving and reducing electricity. let's also appreciate our current fleet performance must improve. As we've indicated, we're aiming for 65% EAF by March 2024 and 70% by March 2025. Maybe in the last week for us as a positive, our average fleet EAF is sitting at 60%. We haven't seen that for many months recently. Thanks.
Well, we'll take any glass half full scenario at this moment with regards to the energy situation right here in South Africa. Mr. Cassim, we'd like to say Jazakallah to you so much for joining us, and all the best. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make the road for you in your interim position easy, inshallah.
Inshallah. Shukran. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. That is Mr. Calib Cassim, the interim CEO of Eskom. Doesn't get any easy in that position. We've seen that with many previous CEOs who have held that difficult position. But the public only wants one thing: consistent energy and a move away from load shedding. From myself, Faraz Patel, that's all we have for you here on Talking Point. I will see you again, same time, same place, inshallah, next week. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.